today I get to do a sermon I really enjoy. The calling of Samuel. When Samuel, we're going back into the Old Testament in the book of Samuel, and I need to kind of set the tone. Actually, this is what the pastor did last night. He explained everything what was going on at the time. So I figured, oh, maybe I'm doing an exegesis sermon today. But here's what you need to know. This was in the time. This was in the time of the judges. You know, Samson, Gideon, a lot of them. We need to do more of those in here because they're great. They're great stories. But it was before King David, before even the time of the prophets, because the person that we're talking about being called is Samuel, and he was the first prophet, or at least the first major prophet. And the nation of Israel was consistently inconsistent. They would worship God for a while, then stop. They had, actually, unfortunately, very much like us. Good, bad, good, bad. At this moment in time, you're probably the main influence or leader in the Jewish faith was the high priest, and this fellow's high priest's name was Eli. And Eli was a fairly good man, but he was kind of a weak leader because his two sons, who were next in command, were terrible. They made the televangelists look like saints. I'm just sorry. They were just terrible. They were terrible leaders. They were stealers. They were adulterers. They were whatever, and they were the next in command in the church. So that's from that standpoint. So now we bring the character of Hannah. Hannah was married to, I forget the fellow's name. His name isn't that significant. She was barren. She did not have any children and was mocked for it, ridiculed for it, because her husband had 2 wives and the other wife had plenty of kids, and she was constantly berating Hannah. First off, guys, you got 2 wives. That's not a good situation in the first place. So Hannah, when she came down to Jerusalem for the annual sacrifice, in desperation, in absolute desperation, pleaded with God to give her a child. And she made this promise. I don't know if we've ever made these promises in desperation ourselves. And she said, if you give me a child, I will give that child back to you, God, in service to God. And it reads here, and here's the verse, by the way, it's 1 Samuel, and she made this vow, saying, O Lord Almighty, if you will only look on your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give me a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life. Have we ever been in a situation that desperate where, God, if you get me out of this, I will do this. I will, and I'm sure I've done that, especially when I was younger. Just give me this. I will never do this. I will never get myself in that situation again. And as soon as you get out of it, you say, oh, that wasn't so bad. God can't really expect me to do what I said I was going to do. Right? Well, that was the decision that Hannah made. And as you may know what's going to happen, she got pregnant. According to the scripture, she got pregnant that night. And had the child. And she kept her promise. When Samuel was weaned, meaning no longer needed to be at the mother's breast, Hannah brought that child, her only child, that she had desperately wanted, but she made a promise to God to give that child back to God. So she brought that child to Eli, the prophet, when this child was probably 3 years old. There's a range of time is when the child is considered weaned. 3 years old is probably a reasonable guess. This is in the olden days. Now, I have a 3-year-old granddaughter. You want to put a face to a decision that Hannah made, because we can say, oh, that was nice that Hannah did this. Remember, she didn't have any other children. And she desperately wanted a child. God answered that prayer, and she upheld her end of the bargain. Isn't that amazing? Because I could not see. I mean, if I were in that situation, I would probably say, oh, that was 3 years ago. You can't expect me to still do what I can't expect me, God, to do this. This is 3 years old. This little girl, I can't give up this child. But she did. She did. So when I picture her doing this, I picture my little Ellie being given away for God's work like that. So with that background, now we come up to, I gotta get the right spot, okay. 1 Samuel chapter 3. Now, Samuel has been working in the temple under Eli, the high priest. Remember, Eli is a good man, but a weak father, and probably a weak leader as well. Samuel he's probably an 11 or 12-year-old child, probably at this time. And sticking to my example of my grandkids, well, that would then be Luke. Luke, who's, 11? Is he 11 or 12? 11-ish? So, now when I read this story about Samuel, I'm thinking of Luke. So the boy Samuel ministered before the Lord under Eli. In those days, the word of the Lord was rare. There were not many visions. Why? Because there wasn't a strong man of God in the area to receive them. Eli was weak. Eli's sons were terrible. And in fact, just prior to, this is Samuel chapter 3, in Samuel chapter 2, Eli had received a word from somebody that he and his family were going to be, how can I say this, wiped out. So to say that in those days the word of the Lord was rare, not many visions there, that was true, except Eli had received a bad word. So one night, Eli, whose eyes were becoming so weak that he could barely see, was lying down in his usual place. The lamp of God had not yet gone out, and Samuel was lying down in the temple where the ark of God was. And then the Lord called Samuel. You ever hear something at night? Sometimes you think you hear some squeak or something like this. Did you call me? Did I hear something? Every once in a while I go up and say, Carol, did you call me? She did. But it was Samuel. And I don't know if it was Samuel or Samuel. I don't know. But Samuel heard something. And he said, well, here I am. And he ran to Eli and said, here I am, Eli, did you call me? Eli said, I did not call you. Go back and lie down. And I don't know if it was, maybe he said, oh, no, I didn't call you. Go back and lie down. So he did. Samuel went and lay down. Then again, Samuel heard, Samuel? Or Samuel? So Samuel gets up, runs to Eli, and says, you call me? Now he said, I don't want to add too much of this. I didn't call you. Go back and lie down. So, and this is a line that I've probably passed over many times. This is 1 Samuel chapter 3, verse 7. Now, Samuel, remember Samuel is probably 11 or 12 years old, like my grandson Luke. Samuel did not know the Lord yet. The word of the Lord had not been revealed to him. I don't mean that why that Luke doesn't know the Lord, but Samuel, he's been going through routines in the temple. There was no personal relationship with the Lord yet. And when they say that, when they're saying Samuel did not know the Lord yet, meaning he hadn't been hearing the voice of God. He did not know who was calling him. One more time. Samuel lays down. And the Lord called Samuel a third time. Now, I don't even presume to pretend what God would sound like. But I don't know if at this point God is saying, Samuel, or again, Samuel, good old Samuel / Luke gets up, goes back to Eli again, and by this time he's got to be saying, I am not going to fall for this trick again. Eli's going to kill me. So he goes and he says, here I am, Eli. Did you call me? Then Eli, and I'll put the word finally realized that the Lord was calling the boy. And I'll pause for a second. Why would Eli not have recognized that God was calling Samuel? Probably because Eli had been far away from God himself. I'm just saying that. So Eli told Samuel, go and lie down. If he calls you again, say, speak, Lord. Your servant is listening. Say that with me. Say it with me. Speak, Lord. Your servant is listening. Speak, Lord. Your servant is listening. When God calls something to you, that's how you need to respond. Speak, Lord. Your servant is listening. So Samuel went down again, laid down. The Lord came and stood there, calling as at the other times. Only this time it's Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel said, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. Samuel, the 11 or 12-year-old boy, heard God's call in his life, and he answered, I'm listening. Yes, Lord, your servant is listening. Then God gave Samuel, 12-year-old boy, I moved him up to 12 for sure, gave him a long prophecy about what was going to happen to Eli and his sons. And you remember, that was already prophesied in chapter 2 of Samuel, and it was not good. It was not good. So when Samuel went back to Eli said, well, what did God say? What did God say? And Samuel didn't want to tell him. Samuel did not want to tell him, but eventually did. 12-year-old boy. Isn't that kind of a strong thing? You know, the first thing that God calls you to do is you got to go tell the high priest, it's not going to turn out too good for you and your sons. But he did that. And then verse 19. The Lord was with Samuel as he grew up. And listen to this line. And Samuel let none of God's words fall to the ground. Meaning, God told him something, he took it in his heart, kept it there. Kept it there. And it said, all of Israel, from Dan to Beersheba, recognized that Samuel was attested as a prophet of the Lord. The Lord continued to appear at Shiloh, and there he revealed himself to Samuel through his word. You can no longer say about Samuel that Samuel did not know the Lord. He did crystal clear when God came to him that evening. Samuel heard the call and obeyed the call. Trust and obey, there's no other way. What a great pick. What a great pick of a song. So, what are my takes from this message? One is, we're never too young to hear God's call, and I can pretty much say that line doesn't matter to any of us in here. But we're never too old to listen to God's call in our life. Let's just look at a couple. Let's look again at the people in this story. What about Hannah? What about Hannah? Now she was, I don't know how old she was. 30 maybe. Maybe even younger than that. You can be desperate for a child at any age, I guess. God answered her prayer, and she did what she promised. She trusted and obeyed. What if she didn't? What if Hannah would have not given Samuel under Eli's care? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if God then would have picked somebody else to be in Samuel's spot. But you know what? She did answer. She did do what she said she was going to do, and she answered God's call. Now even Eli, who ultimately paid a big price for his actions, but he had enough sense to tell Samuel, you go back and you listen, because this is God. This is God speaking. And then you have Samuel. That's Luke. He, and I could be honest with you, see this is easier for him than an older fogey like us. He's not had disappointments of the world yet. Of course, maybe he's saying, how come my mom gave me away in here? But she didn't abandon him. She would come every year, bring him new clothes. I forgot to mention that. She would see him. But he had a heart for God. He had a pure heart. He had a pure heart, and God used him. And this was really just the beginning. Samuel was one of the greatest prophets in the history of the world. Samuel was the one that anointed David king. Samuel was a blessing, was blessed and was a blessing. And I think God has calling in our lives more than just one time. More than just one big time like Samuel. I think God calls us. I think God puts a call on every single person's life for something big. And gives calls probably every day for something that we may not think is big, but it may be affecting somebody else. And I'm just saying, especially as we're going into this new year, and this is not a New Year's resolution, it's just a new year that we need to be open to what God's call is for us in our life. And that call might be, go sit down and have a cup of coffee with some newcomer that's coming to Asbury. Or it could be something huge, I don't know. But when we get that call, when we feel that we've got that call, and remember Samuel didn't know. It took Samuel three tries before he got who it was. But we need to say, speak, Lord, your servant is listening. Speak, Lord, your servant is listening. Amen?
Amen.
Amen.